Hey, my name is Dane Tornell. I'm the executive director for Umpqua Valley Youth for Christ. Part of my job is to travel around the county and meet with pastors, youth pastors, people in the church to train them up to be disciple-making disciples in our county. As I'm sitting with men and women around the county, the conversation seems to continue to lead to this idea of, hey, Dane, hey, by the way, what are you going to do if we have a solar flare? Hey, what do you think is going to happen after the election? Are we going to have mass chaos? And what's your family doing to prepare for like having to be shut in for a while? Hey, Dane, do you do like primitive survival training? And could you teach me how to start a fire with my hands? Hey, Dane, it's like over and over and over. And then Pete Pappas is over at my house. We're hanging out and talking, and we're starting to talk about stuff. And Pete says to me, hey, so if you're driving a truck and I'm driving a truck and we come at each other and I want to go this way and you want to go this way and we don't know each other, how do I know you're a good guy? I was like, that's a really good question, Pete. I have no idea. Maybe a tattoo on our head, a microchip in our wrist. I don't know. What are we going to do here, right? So those are the kind of the questions that have continued to come up. So I thought, you know what we need to do? This is something that's really important, apparently, that the Lord has put onto people's hearts. We have experienced unprecedented weirdness in the last 7 months, and I don't think that's going to slow down, in my opinion. And if it does, great. Then we live as we've always lived. But if it gets worse, I don't know about you, but I'd like to be in a place where I've got a plan. I know who Pete Pappas is, and that I know you're okay as my brother and sister in Christ. So that's what we're here for, is to create a bit of a conversation about this type of thinking. Now, I'm relying heavily on you as the body of Christ to take this kind of information tonight and start to engage your circle of friends. And Todd is going to get real specific on what that looks like tonight, but I need your help in making this happen. I am going to be delivering this product tonight and the notes that we take from tonight, your type of questions, and I'm going to be distributing this to every senior pastor in every Christian church in Douglas County to get every church on the same page, and that's my job, okay? So what this is tonight is a discussion time. We're going to go real fast to get to the Q&A section, which I think is going to be more valuable than the information that we have. What this isn't tonight is primitive survival training. That's not what we're doing here. That's my area of knowledge. That's what I've done for a long time. And if you are interested in that, we'll talk about that at the end, but that's not what we're doing here tonight. This is about protecting your property, your home, and the body of believers, okay? So let me pray, and then I'm going to give the mic to Bill to get us started. Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, we do this, not because we are in fear or frustration or anxiety, but because we want to understand and be prepared as the Scriptures tell us to. Lord, so I pray that you would speak through Bill and Todd and myself, that we can be accurate, concise, and bring glory to you in Jesus' name. Bill?
Now, what I'm going to do here tonight is a little bit strange, it's a little bit difficult, because I don't normally do this kind of thing. I normally speak kind of slow and deliberately and talk on subjects, and I'm not going to do that tonight. Actually, what we did in 2017 as an elder board, we felt like that it's our job, clearly from the Scriptures, to prepare the body to apply Scripture to every aspect of life. And it seems that we do pretty well in the area of salvation and sanctification and marriage and parenting and body life and reconciliation. We do a pretty good job in the area of counseling, modeling evangelism through lifestyle and through speaking the truth in private and in public, in recreation, school, wherever we are. We do pretty well at those things. And yet, the Scriptures apply to every aspect of your life. It applies to your business. It applies to your politics. It applies to even your health. It applies to how you prepare yourself to protect your family. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, if I'm a man and I don't take care of my family plus my immediate relatives, I'm worse than an unbeliever. Well, that's a big responsibility. And so what I did in 2017, we took 3 nights. We went through a complete training on being prepared for any contingency that you faced, from a big storm to a fire to an earthquake to you name it, a pandemic. And none of those things had happened in some of your whole lifetime. Now, I'd seen big storms 3 times in my lifetime that literally almost devastated us around here. But a lot of young people hadn't even seen a big storm like you saw in 2018. In 2017, we did the class. Some people took it serious. They did some preparation. I just want to use one example. Steve and Mary Hamill was in the class. Steve went to work and hooked up a generator, so if things were bad, electricity went off, he could just flip a switch and he had electricity. He could save his refrigerator, his deep freeze, his food, have lights and heat. The first day of the storm, on the way home, they're in a head-on collision. Darn near killed both of them. Get them back from the hospital. They're both injured badly. We get them into their home, and they can stay there because Steve could go switch the switch, have everything work right where he lived. He didn't have to go live someplace else while he was recovering. That's just one example of someone taking the information, using it, and being prepared to face a real crisis in their own life due to a storm that you wouldn't think would have had anything to do with them needing to do that. So I'm giving that one example of why it's important to hear what to do and then do something about it rather than just say, oh, that's a good idea. We're planning tonight to give you enough information for you to take at least 3 steps for October, I think it's 2nd, October 10th, and October 15th to accomplish certain things so that you could be prepared for most contingencies by November. All right? What we did in that first class is I went through and I gave a history, and I said, you know what? You need to know some history. 75 years ago in America, life was totally different. Your car wasn't computerized, your tractor wasn't computerized, the farming was done right next to you. 30% of the people were engaged in that activity, and stores had 3 weeks of food in their back rooms and warehouses for 3 to 4 months. Now it's 3 days. And the food is 500 to 1,000 miles away where it's shipped to your place. Now the trucks are computerized. The grid goes down, something like that happens, they don't run. Fuel don't run. Hospitals don't run. Your phone doesn't work. Now I know what that's like because my phone blew up yesterday and I feel like I've been shot in the leg and trampled on because I can't call my business contacts or anything else. So I'm telling you, we're so technological. It's wonderful when it's working right, but when it's not, it's a dangerous situation. So what we're saying is we have an obligation as men and women to be prepared enough to not only take care of our own family, but then reach out and affect our extended family, and then reach out and touch those in the body of Christ with some charity, okay? Because some people aren't going to be in that position. So I want to just hit on 2 or 3 things. I want to get clear back here to just some simple things that we said we needed to do. Matter of fact, if you have your little sheets with you, take a look. Oh, they don't have those on their sheet. Okay. So I'm going to give you 3 different verses. One's 1 Timothy 5:8 through 16. That tells you the importance to take care of your own family, but it also gives you the obligation to take care of widows and orphans. Okay? So in this plan we're going to talk about tonight, at the end we're actually going to talk about we have an obligation as believers to, as families, make sure that we're prepared to take care of our elderly and take care of our family that way. And then if there's amongst us who don't have that ability, there needs to be a plan ahead of time to take care of folks in that position as the body of Christ. Okay, so those are a couple other things that we need to just take a look at, all right? Another thing I think is important is in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7, we read about Noah preparing for what was coming. Now, it took him 120 years, and he kept trying to convince people, and nobody listened to him. But in doing so, it says he saved his family, which was the remnant for the gospel to go forward, and he condemned those who didn't listen. So some people will get prepared and some won't. But what I encourage us to do as believers is take serious the importance of this just being a part of our life. It's who we are. It's how we plan. The other thing that I think is important is even charity. You know, in Luke, Jesus is talking and he said, you know, use your wealth to buy friends that will greet you in heaven. You say, oh, you can't buy friends. Oh, yes, you can, and you should. Not in a bad sense, but if somebody's hurting and you help them, whether it's with food or finances or whatever, and they don't know Christ, there's a real good chance they're going to be open to the gospel more than they've ever been before because of your charity and your forethought and your caring for them. You understand what I'm saying? So those are some things to be thinking about along this line. Now, I'm not going to say too much more, and I want to kick it back to Dane. The thing that's important here is that in 2017, I mentioned 5 things that could cause us to be in a tough situation. Bad weather, snowstorm, cold, wildfire, pandemic. Have we had anything like that in the last year and a half? We had all those. And the pandemic was kind of lightweight compared to a real pandemic that could hit us. So, are you prepared? Were you prepared? Well, you need to be prepared if you're not. And before you leave here tonight, we'll give you some lists and things. So on those sheets, you see those sheets? We'll talk about them more in here in a minute, but there's 3 sheets there. And the first one is just suggested minimal steps, and we're going to be talking about some of those that you need to take to be prepared for certain amounts of time, like a week, and then a month, and then 3 months, kind of along in that sequence. And you do the primary first things, and then the second things, and then, okay. And then there's lists of lists, and we'll explain that later. And then there's resources. We can't do all this for you. We can give you the resources. We can tell you what can be done. We can give you some examples. We can tell you the steps you need to take and encourage you along the way, but it's up to you to take the steps to do that. How am I on time? I'm done. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Dane now, and we're going to be pretty structured tonight, and we'll get all this other stuff done in question and answer, okay?
Thanks. I'm going to go real briefly through some of the big, the big thought ideas, and that is fuel, food, power, water, and first aid. I'm going to touch on these real brief. So you may have 10 questions that pop into your head. That's the point of me being brief on these. So please write those down. Keep them in your memory. We'll talk about those in the Q&A, because what you're thinking or the question you have is the same as the guy sitting next to you. So so I'm just gonna briefly touch on these. Fuel supply. I had a 3-hour conversation with Ron Tyree of Tyree Oil, a longtime friend of mine. The largest distributor of refined products in our area, controls everything from Eugene to Chico, and I spent 3 hours talking to him and understanding nationwide fuel distribution and how that looks. Folks, I'm here to tell you it's not good, okay? And those are his words. Fuel is hand to mouth. There's a 3-day turnover in supply, 3-day turnover in supply. There's only 250,000 gallons at any given point in Roseburg, plus what's already underground at any gas station. So if you do the math on that and divide that by all of the people who live in our area, we all get about 8 to 10 gallons. So do you think that fuel supply at your house right now is important? It is, because it won't be there very quickly if the roads get shut off and there's no way to get fuel to Roseburg. He owns 4 million gallons in Coos Bay, and he laughed about that. He says, because if we have a giant offshore earthquake and a big tsunami, I lose 4 million gallons of fuel. That's the biggest supply that there is between Chico and Eugene, is in Coos Bay. Ouch, right? So that puts us even in a worse spot than we are right now. Roseburg is an island. We really are, surrounded on all sides by mountains and passes. So what we have in Roseburg is what we have in Roseburg to take care of everybody. So your fuel supply is as important to you as whatever you need to run, right? So let's look at that real quick. Everybody's familiar with ethanol and non-ethanol gas, right? So an ethanol gas has about 2 to 3 months of shelf life before it starts to kind of go bad with nothing added to it, whereas a non-ethanol gas is about 3 to 6 months. Now, that's a big difference in time, right? 3 to 6 months that's not close. Here's what's important that you understand about fuel is temperature change, according to Ron Tyree. Fuel that changes in temperature from nighttime to heat of the day, back to nighttime to heat of the day, is the fuel that doesn't last very long. So your fuel storage being in a place that is cool and shaded all the time, that fuel is going to last lots longer than that fuel that's constantly changing temperatures. So that's just a little bit of nugget there. Now, fuel stabilizers. When you add fuel stabilizers, especially to non-ethanol fuel, you're looking at 1 to 3 years of stability in that fuel. So that little bottle of fuel stabilizers that you add is not just a little bottle anymore. That's big time in that fuel. It doesn't do anything to degrade the value or the octane ability of your fuel. It's important if you're looking for long-term storage. Hope that makes sense. I know you've got questions, and we'll keep them for later. Okay. So Bill had a funny statement when we were meeting going over this. He says we got make sure that we communicate well, that it's the same cost for you to keep your truck full of gas or putting $10 at a time in your gas tank. The truck still has to run. Folks, keep your tanks full. That's a no-brainer right now. If it's starting to drop below 3/4 a tank, stop in, have that truck full. Think about how much volume of fuel that is for some of us. 42 gallons, 45 gallons. That's accessible fuel for us to be able to use in generators, for heat, for doing all kinds of different things. So you have a rolling storage tank rolling around with you that you really need to start thinking all the time now, hey, an earthquake could happen. There'd be no fuel, maybe. I'm going to keep my trucks and my cars full as best that I possibly can, okay? So that's an important one. Propane. Propane or pressurized natural gas, those type of things, lot longer shelf life, right? Propane can store for years and years and years as long as your valves stay good and they don't leak out. But it's heavy, and the canisters are big, and they're expensive, and the fuel's pretty expensive, but it is a good fuel that lasts obviously a really long time. So no brainer on propane. Propane also, though, does much better in the shade than it does in the heat. So make sure your propane tanks are in the shade. Okay, moving on. Food storage. Oh, by the way, if you would like to know more about national fuel delivery, I've got a really cool PowerPoint that shows you every bit of how it works, and it's super interesting. And I could send that to you, and you can go through this slideshow, and it just points out everything like East Coast, Rockies, us, who supplies who, where does the raw product come from? Man, I was stimulated for 3 hours talking to Ron, learning about how fuel's distributed. It was really fun. So I can send that to you. Contact information's on the bottom of your handout to get a hold of me. Food storage. 2 ideas that you need to consider. Dine in and takeout. Dine in and takeout food. Consider that being about half and half. I think that's obvious enough. Some of you are really good at canning, and I'm honestly jealous. But understand that loading up glass jars in a box and putting them in your truck and saying I'm hitting the road here for 2 weeks and I'm going to feed my family, that's not realistic. So having the ability to take food with you that is durable, potentially freeze-dried, all those kind of things. That's easy to get a hold of right now, may not be easy to get a hold of the first week of November. So if you're wanting long-term food storage that's portable to-go food, that needs to be something that you think about doing this week. That supply chain right now, folks, we're not the only ones talking about this kind of stuff right now. That freeze-dried long-term storage food is getting really low. We in Oregon have 2 of the largest freeze-dried packaging plants in the entire world are in Oregon, right? We can get the stuff, but it's going to go away pretty quick. So please consider that in your preparation. Bill, you want to touch on anything on dine-in type food?
Yeah, there's three things. Canning. And canning a variety of things for health. If you have that capacity, if you don't, barter with somebody or get with somebody that does and work together on it. The other thing is freezing. Freezing's great, but you got to have a way to keep your freezer going, a generator or whatever. So like in the snow, a lot of people I know lost their food because they didn't have a generator. So generator and fuel to keep that going. And then the last thing is dried jerky. Some of the most wonderful stews and soups you can ever do is with just dehydrated stuff right out of the garden. And we just do bunches of it and stick it in the freezer and pull it out and throw it all together, and you got a great stew. So that might be one of the best, fastest, and long-term ways of having a great supply of food. Oh, one other thing on that. If you're going to put canning jars someplace on a shelf, put a board up in front of them, because we're supposed to, if we have an earthquake, it's on the ground. It's all gone. Yeah. Okay? Little simple thing.
Yeah, and then you're going to eat it all because you feel bad. You're down there slurping it up. Honey, I can't eat anymore. Your turn. Yeah. Okay, power supply. Just some stuff that might not be in your wheelhouse, and that is the difference between an inverter, a generator, and an inverter generator. Those are 3 different products. Okay? An inverter is a unit that actually plugs into a DC power source, converts that power to AC to be able to use in your house. They make them in lots of different sizes, and they're relatively cheap. $150 right now buys you like a 3,800 to 4,000 watt inverter, which is enough to probably run a full-size freezer and a refrigerator and a power tool all by itself. Now, that has to have some DC source of power. Well, that's your car. So I don't own a generator. I don't. But I own 2 really large inverters that hook to my truck and my wife's car. During Snowmageddon, I burned 11 gallons of gas in 8 days. And I kept my refrigerator and my freezer going on an inverter off my Honda Pilot. That's it. 11 gallons of gas, 8 days is all it took to keep those 2 units frozen. Okay? So it's a great option for you. Not all of us can go out and buy a $900 or $1,000 generator, right? Now, if you can, they're awesome because they can do a lot more than what an inverter can do. Inverters are limited on amperage, which is kind of the of the power source, right? Whereas a generator is going to give you that to be able to push things a little bigger, to light up your house, to maybe run a heating system in your house, those kind of things. There's 2 different kinds of generators, though. Normal generators that you and I are probably most aware of are the big units. You pull them, they run full speed, and they just run and run and run. They're always making the same amount of electricity as long as it's running. An inverter generator costs way more money, but is probably double, maybe triple fuel efficient, is a generator that only draws power when it's under load. So when you plug something into the inverter generator, it elevates its RPMs to produce the power needed for the draw, and then when you unplug it, it shuts itself down and just barely runs. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You fire up your freezer, you plug it in, wah, comes on. You like my sound effects? It comes on strong, runs your, so all night long, if that unit's running all night long, your refrigerator is kicking on and off, right? Well, so then is your inverter generator. It's kicking off on and off as well as it needs power. So those are different. The cost difference, though, is huge. Most people aren't going to go out and buy one of those. But if it's in your process right now, thinking I'm going to get a generator, might be worth looking at just for fuel efficiency. Most of those generators, you look on them and they say, we'll run for 10 hours. That's a lie. Any of you that have a generator know I can top that baby clear off to the top and run it all night, and I got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go pee, and put gas in my generator. That's what you're doing. So that's just the reality of them. But I hope that if you have any questions, again, ask more on that. Water filtration. This is probably the biggest. Should have put it on the top of the list. But we can't rely on our power supply. A power supply to push us water. A lot of you guys are on wells. That's awesome. You got to have a way to power your well. But as Bill was talking about, we get some sort of a large solar flare, EMP, some kind of attack that shuts down power supply. All of a sudden, Umpqua Water Basin's not pushing water anymore to us, right? So we got to be able to get water out of the stream, out of the river, and be able to turn that into drinking water. So instead of me having an example, which I was going to bring, of how to filter water, for fun, I just said DIY water filter on Google. There are 80 bazillion ways to very effectively filter water. But some of the supply necessary to really do that well is not stuff that you're going to have on hand. Now, in emergency, as a primitive survival guy, I can come up with lots of different ways to make water drinkable so you're not getting parasitic issues, right? But as far as filtering potentially hundreds and hundreds of gallons for days and days and days to be able to supply for my family's drinking water, that's a different kind of a story, okay? Primitive survival is me needing a little bit of water. Taking care of my family for 5 weeks, 6 weeks with no water, that becomes a bigger deal. So I encourage you to look that stuff up and find that you will very easily be able to build your own water filter, and it'll be fun. It really is. It's an easy process to do, and you'll be like, man, how come I didn't know this before? Well, you did know it because that's how every well works. It rains, the water goes down through a giant water filter, goes into the ground, you suck it back up and drink it. So that's what you're going to be building. So next is by the way, on that, sometimes when you look on Google, you're going to see a lot of talk about different types of carbon, which is charcoal, basically. There's activated or oxygenated carbon, and there's non-oxygenated or activated carbon. They're very different. They both will filter your water, okay? They both will filter your water, but activated carbon does way, way better on microbes. Little teeny tiny type of filtration system. And you can purchase for very cheap activated carbon. It is super inexpensive. And that is a really, really good filter if your water has any kind of oils, chemicals, anything like that. That activated carbon just goes and just sucks that stuff in and doesn't let it out. So make a note. Activated carbon if you're going to buy some, but regular carbon, charcoal, stuff you find in the bottom of your barbecue, stuff that's in your fireplace, is also very effective at filtering water itself. It does need to be packed a little bit tighter, and it can give some people a little bit of a stomach ache, but it can also relieve stomach aches. In primitive survival, we teach that grasses are full of nutrients, but grasses also give you really bad gas and really bad stomach aches. So drinking small amounts of water with a little bit of charcoal from a fire and drinking that will relieve that gas in your stomach. So anyway, so that's it on the water. First aid. Now, I've got a real pet peeve about first aid. So I'm going to be a little Dane-like right now. Dave, don't shake your head. So don't go out and buy the huge first aid kit. The reason why you buy the huge first aid kit is because it's hanging on the shelf and looks really pretty. That's why you bought it. Most of the stuff in that big first aid kit is absolutely worthless for you. In a survival, long-term issue. The things that you need to have are the things that are going to kill you. if we're having a problem, those are your first efforts, is towards wound care. Okay, the stuff that causes you to bleed out, the stuff that would cause infection. Okay, so infection's a big word in the survival realm. You have got to stop a wound from becoming infected, or else you're just done and it doesn't matter, right? So how do you keep a wound from becoming infected? The main thing is cleanliness. You have to be able to keep a wound clean so that the wound can be properly treated so that it heals itself. That's the big one right there. So big gashes, big cuts. I don't want to say bullet hole wounds, okay? So I won't say that one. But stuff like that are serious wounds that need to be treated. That's what I'm talking about in the first aid. Once you get established your wound care and your infection control, now you can start buying some Band-Aids and some more gauze wraps and stuff like that. So sealed bandages, wraps that hold those bandages on, triple antibiotic ointments, having a clean supply of T-shirts ready to go for large wound care, those kind of things, that's got to be number one priority on your first aid list. And I know there's lots of questions on that one, okay? All right, so I'm done. We're going to get into a little bit more serious stuff here with Todd. Really excited about this because this is us coming together as the body of Christ. So please pay close attention. Todd, here we go.
Yeah, I'm going to run through this really quick. What this represents is typical human behavior in an emergency. And specifically, this applies to people who are not prepared for anything. So, for instance, when the snow hit, I'm from West Virginia, it'll drop 24 inches of snow and people still go to work. If it drops 2 inches of snow here, oh my gosh, end of the world, right? So that's what this represents. 0 to 24 is the first 24 hours. Depletion. Any stock that we have, fuel, grocery stores, anything, gone. Anybody see the Snowmageddon incidents out at Sherm's? Everything is gone. Shelves are empty within 24 hours. Don't even try it. Don't do it. Have it there already and laugh at the people. Well, don't laugh. Well, yeah, you can laugh if you want. Don't do that. First 24 hours is absolutely madness, and there's nothing left. Not even toilet paper. 24 to 72 hours is the lull. People will suck into their residences and wait. They'll hunker down. Because modern day society is, nothing's barbaric here right now. And within 72 hours, most things get fixed. Right? Most things get fixed. And that's typical. 72 to 96 hours, people are going to start coming out. Now, I am now talking about dystopia. The big whatever happened. The fault shifted, earthquake happened, or what have you. So that means communications, electricity, nothing's up, nothing's happening, nobody's talking, no way to talk. Right around this period, people are going to start exiting their residences and try to make contact with other people and ask, well, what's going on? They want information, right? So you'll start seeing that. 96 hours and 120, those who are not prepared, in the worst case scenario, they're going to start asking for help. They're going to knock on your door. One of the notes I put in there, if I'm correct, I'm trying not to look at the phone because it takes too long. Some things like, for instance, if you are perceived to be wealthy, okay, now that might be you have a really nice house and you're in crippling debt because of the nice house. Well, somebody looking at your nice house is going to think, well, you're rich. So what are they going to do? They're going to come to your house. You may not even know them. They're going to knock on the door. Hey, can you help us? Big sob story, and it may be illegitimate. If that person doesn't get help, and you got to understand, if you're prepared, you're going to prepare for X amount of people because we're going to talk about that right next. You're not going to be able to help them, really. Right? You're going to have to turn them away. They'll go away that time. If they come back, there's going to be a little bit more force behind what they're asking for. They're going, how did I put it here? Sorry, I lost my place.
Asking for specifics.
Well, they're going to play on the heartstrings. They're going to say, well, this happened, we're really, and this person's sick, and it's just going to be more forceful. Okay, again, you couldn't help them the first time, not going to be able to help them the second time. If they come back a third time, you need to pay attention to that because it's most likely going to be a demand. You have this, I don't, you give it to me. Does that sound familiar? Okay, it gets worse in scenarios where people don't have conveniences and people who are not prepared. If that happens, I wrote in my notes, pay attention to that. Take note of that because that's significant. That person will most likely be a problem. Almost guarantee it, right? After 120 hours, panic. Banditry starts, looting starts, crimes start after 120 hours. Again, averages here. Okay, yes, we live in Roseburg. Yes, Roseburg's still a bubble. Roseburg actually doesn't belong in Oregon. It belongs in the south somewhere further east. But the point is, yes, this will happen in Roseburg. Yes, it happened in Roseburg during the snow. Yes, it did. And no, law enforcement could not get to people who needed help with Taterhead breaking into their garage stealing stuff. We couldn't get there. Why? Because there's daggone 6 feet of snow on the ground, and we don't have the vehicles for it, right? So if there's not questions there, I will be absolutely astounded. I'm done with that section. You guys got anything? Okay, moving on. Now we're going to talk about that contact. I was saying people going out looking for, hey, what's going on, that type of thing. You, individual that I'm talking to right now, need to listen to this, please. In a really bad incident and we're not talking 3 weeks. Okay, that's not a really bad incident. Well, for here it is, but it's not a really bad incident. You need to have no less than 3 other contact families that you have sat down and had some semblance of this conversation with, who are on board with what you're trying to do and who understand the significance of natural disaster, big massive fires. We saw a mass exodus from Glide, did we not? Horrible what happened. And everybody came to Roseburg because that's where you need to come because there's nowhere else. And so the city was lined with RVs and all kinds of stuff. That represented for me people who did not do this. They did not do this. And if they did, all of this was in the epicenter. No, that's a no, don't do that. So I don't want to get bogged down on that. No less than 3, no more than 5. If you get 5 families, it becomes untenable. It becomes too much things that you need to do, too many conversations you need to have, too many people that you have to get on the same sheet of music. So no less than 3, no more than 5. Here's the metric for that. Producers, people who can produce, okay? In other words, not little children, like my grandchildren are not producers. Well, they are producers, but not of the kind of things we would need in something like that, okay? Just to clarify that. These are people who can contributors. The average in America for family size is 3, and Oregon's right about there, a little bit under. That's not the case with this church, nor Douglas County. I have 5 producers in my family that are here right now. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 producers in my family out of 9, right? So it's contributors. So what that equates to is no less than 9 contributors. You don't want to have 5 families and 3 contributors. That does not work. You understand what I'm saying? That does not work. You have to have those amount of people who can contribute to the effort, whatever the effort may be, okay? Good on that, you think? Oh yeah, sorry. Got to give Dane the cred on this. We're talking about, we call them pods. Well, Dane called them pods. I'm like, all right, we'll call them pods. These are people groups that you're going to go talk to and say, hey, when such and such happens, this is kind of what I think about. What do you think about it? Oh yeah, I think about the same thing. Hey, how about we kind of get together and make a plan, right? And so you sit down and have that conversation. What's that look like? How do we prepare? You want that first family to be what we call or what I call in the epicenter. The epicenter is very close proximity to where you live, but not right beside you. That means you're going to have to move and go to that person, or they're going to have to move and come to you if something happens. The prime example is what happened in Glide, the fires, and everywhere else in the fires. Fires are notorious for this. We should learn from fires. Do not have these points of contact in the same general epicenter, all of them. Okay, the first one needs to be, here's an example, and I'm going to go there, the bullet hole thing. Okay. Let's say banditry happens, and they knock on Todd's, well, that's a bad example. They just knock on Joe Schmuckatelli's door. Yeah? That's a Marine Corps thing. They knock on his door and they say, hey, give me some food. And he's like, no, I don't think so. All right, I'll be back. They don't really say that. They just kind of what I told you earlier, what's going to happen. Okay, the third time they come back, they may come back with 7 or 8 people. What's going to happen? Something bad's going to happen, or they're just going to take your food. Well, hello, you should listen to me and don't be there on the third time. Go somewhere else. Move. Or the epicenter hits. The fire hits your house. You know the fire is hitting. Level 2, and then all of a sudden level 3. We jumped 2 levels in the Glide area from the time I went from my house to home from work. 2 levels, bam, instantly gone. Bad, right, Dave? I mean, if you're not ready, how terrifying, how horrible. Well, don't do that. Have a plan. Where is that person that's closest going to be? Go to their house. Hunker down. If you can stay, stay. Do not start jumping all over the place. Stay put unless you can't. And if you can't, then move to the next one. And the next one needs to be out of the epicenter. Nowhere near it. A completely different place. Why? Well, if we get to the point that happens oftentimes overseas, actually overseas they live like this, a lot of countries literally live like this all the time. It's contagious. Looting and banditry is contagious. We've seen it on the news for the last 100 and some days. It's contagious. And it mushrooms out. It'll start, in this case, Roseburg. By the way, that's what this is for. Am I good on time? Speed it up. Okay. So if you're here, one point of contact needs to be somewhere here, and the next one needs to be somewhere here. And everybody that's in that loop needs to understand. Once this one leaves, that means 2 families coming to the next point. So the next point better know that there's 2 families and who it is that's coming. You see what I'm saying? It compounds. Okay? So I did a little graph for those of you who live in Roseburg. Roseburg is broken up perfectly for this, and intentionally on the law enforcement side, but unintentionally otherwise. This is the north and south, and this is the east and west. Roseburg's broken up for law enforcement purposes into halves. I-5 and the river, west side's area 2, east side's area 1. The next breakdown would be Garden Valley, basically. That's the breakdown of north and south. That breaks you into 4 quarters. Okay, that's how Roseburg's broken up. That's how we patrol and handle it, just like that. Okay, so if you're here and your primary's over here, that doesn't work. Why? Well, because you have to cross the daggone river to get to them. So if your primary is, or number 1 person is on the other side of a river, that's a big fat no. You got to drop that family and reform. It doesn't work if you have to cross a river. Okay, so I'll leave that there. Well, I better get my phone out. Yeah, I'm doing horrible. Yeah, I'm doing horribly on the efficiency here. Yeah. I keep wanting to say any questions because it's habit. No. Okay, I covered everything. Okay, right, got it. Communication breakdown, got it. Last thing I want to say about that, really what you're looking for is redundancy. Here, redundancy. Everybody has to do their part. So enough of that. We're going to move on. Went over Roseburg's layout. Communication. I'll say this. There is no tech like low tech.
Ever hear that?
No tech like low tech. In other words, all these awesome communication devices, if we have a grid failure, done. Mount Scott Tower almost went out. Emergency communications, done. Useless. Anything that's electronic for communication purposes is useless. Right? Well, I got a bunch of walkie-talkies. Awesome. But if there's no power, how are you going to power those perpetually? More things that you have to keep track of, right? No tech like low tech. Parameters must be set prior to collapse. If you're going to communicate with those members of your pod, you have to set up how are we going to communicate. In the intelligence community, in the military, we call it, and we also call it on the grunt side of the Marine Corps, I'm up, they see me, I'm down. And that's as fast as your comms are. That's it. I'm up, they see me, I'm down. You don't get on there and blab a daggone book. You key up, you say what you need to say, and you key down, and that's it. Right? So the question is, can you do that? Radio comms should be established on a strict time schedule and require as little time as possible. And in the end, face-to-face is the absolute best form of communication that exists.
Face-to-face.
Face-to-face. And home defense.
Yeah.
Did I cover everything on the comms?
Yeah, we'll have to cover the rest of it.
There'll be too much.
Yeah, right. Okay, home defense. I mean, I could camp here for 8,000 years. I'm going to say these 4 things, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Accept that you need to defend your house. Accept that fact. And you might think, well, why is he making a big deal of that? Well, sit and think about it and see how much you oppose the thought of having to defend your residence. I won't say anything about that. Next one is even worse. Well, no, it's actually awesome. Guns or martial weapons. They better be freaking there. Usable, meaning if it's a gun, it has a daggone round in the chamber and a full magazine and 6,000 other ones ready. And somebody that holds it that knows how to pull the trigger. Because if you have a gun that's not loaded, you might as well write Glock on a purse and hit them with it.
Glock's a gun, by the way.
The final 2 things, anti-breaching devices, meaning keep somebody from kicking your door in. And if you have a bunch of those horrible things called windows, I wish well, I won't say, yeah, I will. I wish my house had no windows. And then the final thing is escape. How are you going to get out of your house? And where are you going to go? Home defense. Okay, and there's so much more. I'm done.
Now, this is like fire hydrant overload. You see what I'm saying? That was intentional, by the way, so that it comes out where we can have a discussion. Then we talk about training. Then we talk about long-term stuff. This is just to open up the reality of what we could face, and that there, fact, is resources, there is training, and there are things you can do to be prepared, and you don't have to be afraid. You need to be educated so you're not afraid to take the steps needed to protect your family, supply your family, and so forth. I'm supposed to spend a little bit of time on widows and elderly care. I've already covered that, and again, that's something that's a long-term thing. We've even got to talk more about it as leaders of our church, how we as a church, when the family can't do that job, how we as a church do that job. That's something that we got to discuss more, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. You may have questions on it, but obviously it's the family's obligation first, and then extended family, and finally the church.
Okay. Hey, if you guys could grab your Purposeful Preparations page real quick and just read the preparation timeline. And I think with what you've heard so far and what you may read here will help us create the best possible Q&A that we can based on these timelines. So we are asking our church members to do this. I will be doing this. I will be going to Dave and Saunders' house, probably Todd's house, probably Pete's house, maybe the Ellis's house, and having this kind of conversation within the next week and a half, because I want to take this seriously to protect my family. And so we've already begun on a lot of this stuff here and are in a pretty good, and feel like we're in a pretty good spot. We've done some really fun trainings with my daughters, escape, gun work, all that kind of stuff. But I want you to take a look at that Purposeful Preparations, the timeline of preparation just for a minute, and then we'll have a Q&A. I got to spend about a month and a half in Europe a bunch of years ago, and one of the things that intrigued me in the construction was they did everything with block and concrete. Pete would have been totally impressed. What they installed, though, on their windows were these things called rotella. And a rotella, not the food, but it was essentially a stainless steel rolling complete block off that would go and cover the windows, and it would go up inside the wall. Like, you couldn't even see it there. So they had these beautiful interiors of their homes, and then when one little electric switch or a pull-down arm, it would go wha-boom and completely seal off the glass. And I was like, man, that is super cool. So we don't have that option here. It's not in our construction, and we don't have big concrete walls on all of our homes. But you can now start to create the ability to be able to cover your windows and secure your windows if needed. Because Todd's right. Windows are a problem. I have huge windows in my house that are 7.5 feet tall, 3 feet wide, and they go all the way to the floor. I mean, I can just go, bam, and walk right through into my house. Well, I have the ability now to be able to completely cover those on the inside of my home and secure the ability to get in through those big windows. And my daughters are now trained to execute that, and I don't have to be there. Daddy doesn't have to do it. So my daughters will do it, right? But they're big, strong, mature girls. You might have little kids. So what's your plan to be able to secure your windows? So just to add to that home security piece there. Before we get to the timeline stuff, questions on fuel, food, power, water, first aid?
On your list of books here, what would be the best for the medical piece?
Bill, book on the list of books, is there a book on there that is best for the medical side of things?
This particular book here by James Wesley Rawls covers everything. There's one here on wilderness medicine and that sort of a thing. But the main thing that you need to be thinking about in the sense of medicine is some simple training in CPR and having the medicines that he's talking about for wound care and, for care around the home, but also thinking about the things that you need as a family that if you can't get them, medications you're on, vitamins, minerals that you need or can't get, those kind of things you need to have in supply so that if for even 3 weeks a person who can't get insulin's in trouble. So those kind of things you need to think ahead of and have taken care of. And there's some great books on CPR, and we're actually probably going to do a class on CPR. So we're going to do some of that hands-on type of training. But I don't know of anyone that's a whole lot better than the wilderness book that I got here.
Water purification tablets are really important also.
Yeah, water purification tablets or steri straws, those kind of things that allow you to drink directly out. Those are very inexpensive and pocketable. So that's big. That's a big deal for being able to take care of water now type stuff, especially on a personal level. If you're single, man, there's just no excuse not to have that stuff with you, around you all the time. That's easy stuff. Yep, great one.
On the activated carbon, is it just like the little capsules, or do you buy it bulk?
You can buy it in bulk, you can buy it small, and you can buy it in bulk. In fact, Todd, do you have a resource? Grab that mic and a resource on activated carbon.
Yeah, it's a horrific resource because apparently activated charcoal right now is daggone gold. You can't find it. And so I just ordered bulk out of Amazon at $68 for 20 pounds.
But 20 pounds of activated carbon will filter a lot of water.
A lot of water.
A lot of water.
But it's still not dang cheap. It's a little annoying.
$68, so that's pretty cheap for staying alive. How much do you need to filter a large amount? That's a great question. Don't take my answer rude. Depends how dirty the water you're trying to filter is.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
That's exactly it.
It is exactly it. So the best water that you can find. So in primitive survival, there's pre-filter, then there's pre-filter, and then there's pre-filter, and then you filter, and then you drink it. Right? So you're trying to get your water as clean as you possibly can with as many mechanisms as possible before you get to the point where you think about, now I'm going to really treat this for something serious. But at that point, if it's a survival situation, you don't care. You need water no matter what. You're not worried about giardia. You're not worried about getting some toxins in you. You need water just for your brain to work right. So yeah, cleaning your water the best you possibly can, even through simple things like straining it through shirts to get sediment out, saves your activated carbon from having to do that kind of work, right? Or absorbance of the oils that are in there off the top of the water if it's oily water, which in a dystopic type of society, we've got rivers, but those rivers are going to get real nasty when 50,000 people are down there doing their business near the water, right? So now we're trying to pull out water that everybody upriver from us is doing their dishes, going to the bathroom, pulling out their water. So it becomes an issue. So pre-filter your pre-filtered water.
One of your best pre-filters for any kind of water is going to be your actual like pool filter sand. Run it through a 5-gallon bucket with a hole in the bottom. That's going to pre-filter. Run it through your activated charcoal after that. But that's real super easy. That sand's super easy to get. Fill a 5-gallon bucket up with it. Put a hole in the bottom of the bucket. That's almost the only pre-filter you need, I would say.
Yep, and that's why most mountain stream water is so clean. It flows through moss, flows through sand. It goes underground, then it comes back up again, goes underground, comes back up again. So highest water sources that you can are going to be your cleanest water sources, and then running through as much sand, moss, stuff like that. And again, DIY water filter on Google, you're going to look at, and you're going to see a whole bunch of pictures, and you're going to say, I can do that, but you need to practice, right? Everybody thinks they can shoot a basketball until they try.
If our primary source of heat is electric, like in our house, is there a more efficient way to run that than using a generator if our power goes out? Like, is there a better heating source than firing up your entire house's heating system?
That's a big deal because, great question. An inverter and most small generators aren't going to produce the power to run a home electric heating system. Yes, catalytic heaters are a great option. If you're familiar with catalytic heaters, I think probably the most famous are the Little Buddies or Big Buddy or Mr. Heaters. I think they get huge. I have one. My shop is 24 by 36, 15-foot ceilings, and my Mr. Heater in about 15 minutes will bring that up 10 degrees. It's unbelievable power source. Now, they say they're catalytic and they're indoor heaters. Yes, they are, but you still want to vent a little bit. Fan again, a fan is a great way. But those are propane powered, and so you will run out of propane after a while. And they actually use a decent amount of propane, but they put out a massive amount of heat. So, and not a bad investment. Camping, Heather, you'll use that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's look at the timeline preparation real quick. I'm going to skim super fast. Does everybody feel comfortable with what the pod creation is? You feel like you got a good idea?
How far apart do the pods have to be?
The question was how far apart. So Todd touched on this a little bit. So I want to have one or two people that I can walk to. Okay, so that I already got that determined who those are and who I'm talking to. But then I also want to have some people that I can get away from my area. So that's what he's talking about. Your epicenter, you need to have the ability to take you and your cohort person and go to the next place, which takes a little bit of coordination. And that's what we're asking our church to do, is to be prepared for those kind of things. So I live in the Melrose area. We're full of studs. I mean, that's just how it is. And So we need to coordinate, our area needs to coordinate about who's who. Some of you live in really, to be honest, dangerous areas. Some of you, like Brandon Icola, they'd have to be shooting tanks from Looking Glass over top of the mountain to try to hit his place, right? So strategically, some of us live in very safe places and some of us don't. So that's something to consider about where you are. Your best option may not be to stay home at all if we enter a dystopian state. But that's okay. Have the plan to be able to take you and your family and let's go. And know that you're going to be welcomed by a brother and sister in Christ when you get there. That's what we're asking you to do. So start working on your water filtration system, your food. This is stuff you're going to be buying and eating anyway, so we're not asking you to go spend additional money. You got to eat, and you can store the food and put that food on a rotation after we go for a while. What kind of fuel do you need to start powering what you think you're going to be using? So starting to store those kind of fuel, putting your first aid together. I'm more than happy to help folks do that. Vitamins, guys. Vitamins are a big deal. Freeze-dried food can be great, and trust me, I've eaten probably more than anybody in this room of freeze-dried, being a mountain climber for 15 years. It messes you up after a while. It tastes great for about 8 to 9 days, and all of a sudden you're like, something's wrong. So just know, yeah, that's when you can start burning your toilet paper, because you're not going to need it anyway. If you know what I'm saying. One of the reasons is that a lot of the vitamins that control body systems are cooked. So having a good vitamin supply, put the list there for you. Those are your main ones. A lot of those vitamins you don't normally take because those are in foods that you eat, especially meats, red meats, vegetables, fruits, stuff like that. You're getting a lot of these vitamins. So grocery stores out of fruit. It's January. You're not getting vitamins in your food anymore. So you got to start thinking about where those vitamin supply is going to come from. Hopefully it's in some of the foods that you've stored, but just to look at. A go bag. That is probably a non-familiar idea for a lot of us. A go bag is something that has basic survival type stuff in your vehicle ready to go. I did mountain search and rescue. My go bag was packed full of food. I had water supply right next to my go bag, all my climbing equipment. Everything was in the trunk of my car all the time, never left. So when the phone rang, it was like I ran out with the clothes on that I was wearing, got in my car, got to the where the police were, got dressed, and headed up the mountain. So that's what a go bag looks like. What does your go bag look like? Well, I got me, my wife, and 3 daughters. My go bag is significant. I'm not saying anything about anything. I'm just gonna stop right now. And then practice. Your go bag has a lot to do with you getting out of your house. So everybody knows you run out of the house and then you go, oh wait, I forgot my. Can't be doing that. This takes practice. No different than running bases or making plays on a basketball court. Or it's like practice this stuff. Practice it. And trust me, it's fun. You get your little kids going on, all right, kids, we're going to learn how to get out of the house really fast. I did this when my daughters were tiny. They thought it was the coolest thing ever. They got to jump out the window, pop the screen off, jump out the window, and run. They thought that was the coolest thing, and I'm timing them. Nope, that was 4 minutes. Too slow. Do it again. Okay. Nope, 10 lunges. Then do it. It was just fun. They just thought that was a great deal to do. But you gotta know that you can, right? So those kind of things look at doing this week. Yeah, that's what we're asking. That's what Bill Hurd, guy who loves you more than anybody, is asking you to start doing this week, is that list right there, so that you are prepared. Can you guys do that? Yeah, start working on this stuff. And then if you look down at October 10th, it's just more of the same, slowly increasing your capacity. Checking out your water filtration, maybe building one with your family. It'd be super fun. Watch it work. Drink the delicious water. Heat up the water. Make some hot chocolate out of it. Something like that. Start looking at battery supply, that thing. Increasing your first aid supply. Laura Pappas, I know, would be more than willing to take phone calls. She's very adept on the newest of things for taking care of wound care, stuff like that. She carries a massive first aid supply stuff wherever she goes and knows a lot about, like, the names. She can just tell you the names of products off the top of her head. I can't do that. She's good at that. No pressure. And then finalizing, getting your go bags finalized, your practice. How am I going to get out of my house? Where am I going? How am I getting there? That kind of thing. October 15th. Now, this date isn't necessarily an arbitrary date. Okay, I'm going to say some hard language here. Beginning of November is our election. That's why we're here today. That's why this was pushed to be done tonight. Okay? This November 15th date happens to be psychologically when most of our society is going to go, oh, shoot. Junk could hit the fan in 2 weeks. I better get my stuff together. I only got 2 weeks to do this. I got 1 weekend to take care of this, right? So that's why this list is the way it is. That's why we're saying October 15th is essential for you to have your stuff in order, because if people start freaking out, which I'm looking at the election personally, and it could go either way, like whichever side wins, it's not good type of thing for our world. So you need to make sure that you've got stuff ordered now so that it can get to your house if you have to order it or purchased or whatever, so that Covenant Life Fellowship or the body of believers aren't the ones scrambling at the end going, oh, I can't get anything. I can't get anything. And we need to be diligent to be watching what's going on in our culture those last couple weeks before the election, because there may be people that know that you have a lot of supply. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut about this stuff. Okay?
Amen.
Okay? I know it sounds militaristic or mean, but folks, a week before the election, if it's looking like Trump's going to win, we have been told over and over that they will burn it down. What does that mean? I don't care. That's a threat, right? So let's take a serious consideration that 2 week point. I want you to have your stuff ready to go. Dave?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that it's important for you to realize that if the cities are burning pre-election, you need to understand what that means post-election. So this isn't what I think is happening, and I think we're hearing it from a lot of places, is that the concern on one side is that the election's going to go a direction they don't like. So it's already starting. So I think it's important for you to just keep that in mind and understand that's the way things have been angling as we've been going. So just be aware of that. So it shouldn't take you by surprise if something wacky happens. I mean, Lord willing, it wouldn't, and that'd be great, and that'd be the mercy of God. But I think we just have to be aware of it.
And we talked about Roseburg being an island. That is a little bit of an advantage too, right? So supply chain is not good for us. It is now. Okay, so let's take advantage of our supply chain now, because then it may not be available. The advantage that it gives us is tactically, nobody cares about Roseburg. That's a good thing, right? So we're going to see it hit in Eugene. We may see Medford start blowing up, Reading, Seattle again, blah, blah, blah. But at least we've got some sign that something's happening, right? So then we can, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they were serious. Like, this is serious. Like, they are going to burn it down. Well, it may be a while before it gets to Roseburg. Todd was kind of making fun of it. It's like, oh, we'll know because tanks and Jeeps and ammo trucks are going to be flying down I-5 right through Roseburg. And we'll be like, oh, yeah, look at that. Okay, time to prepare. Thanks for stopping. They didn't even grab a burger. They just drive right through. Nobody cares about us here. We don't have any resources here that people are going to come after, but it will. We know that there's folks that live in our area that are going to get on the destruction bandwagon, right? So it will happen. It just may happen a little slower here, kind of like our clothing trends and everything else in Roseburg. And with that, I'm done, apparently. Okay, I'm just messing with it. I'm full on a Roseburgian now. I'm almost 10 years. Okay, contact info. As you guys know, Todd is a police officer. If you have specific type of questions for Todd is very willing and has a much better schedule to be able to help you if you're concerned about home security. I'm sure there's some other folks in town that would like to help too, but we would ask that you would contact Todd through me, if you would, okay? So that I can reach out to Todd and get you guys connected. So that's Todd's contact information is my contact information, okay? And then, of course, you all know Bill Hurd and probably all have his contact info. So Bill wants to be available to help get you resourced as well. So,
Well, I just want to say I hope that this doesn't scare you, that it actually prepares you so you don't have to be afraid. And one of the things that I think is all of our responsibilities is to once in a while to sit back and think a little bit further down the road and look at what has happened in the past. We did this 3 years ago and said it was a good idea to prepare. And 3 out of the 5 things that we said could cause disruption happened already. Now we've got Portland on fire and things going on all over the place. So these things happen. In other countries, they happen all the time. But these things happen, and the whole disruption thing is the last thing you think, oh gosh, that won't happen here. It's going on in Portland right now. I got friends up there. It's not a pretty picture. So just get yourself prepared and think these things through and get to work on it, because these are things, none of this is going to cost you a lot of money. None of these things are things that you're going to be wasting. They're all things you're going to need to have anyway, and then you're just going to rotate them, and then you're going to train yourself to be prepared, and you're going to talk to each other, if you haven't, about how to get out of the house in a fire. What do you do if someone does come to your home? Do you know what your children are going to do and what you're going to do and how you're going to protect yourself? Just simple things like that we don't think about because we've lived in America, right? America's changed, and it's changing. And if it never happens, great. You're prepared if it does. But if it does happen, you're going to be real glad you took these steps. And they're not expensive, but they need to be done. Please don't just put it off and say, oh gosh, that sounded great, that's kind of exciting. No, get it done. We're going to check back with you, on these timelines and say, hey guys, are you doing that? Not forcing anybody to do anything. Suggestions, think it's really important, and we'll encourage and help any way we can. And there will be ongoing training for CPR and learning concealed carry and how to defend your homes and how to set your home up properly. And it should just be part of your lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Question for the women. As I've been traveling around the county, I'm getting a question about some ladies saying, "Hey, I know how to work my gun, and I know how to work the shotgun, and that's it. And I sure would like to know how to make that rifle work, and that other shotgun I have no idea about, and that pistol, that revolver, that." So my question to you is that something that you would be interested in actually putting your hands on? So you're not just talking about maybe your personal gun, but just understanding the mechanisms of a variety of different types of weaponry. Is that something that I'm getting a lot of yes head shakes vehemently? Okay, that'd be easy to do. Where there's lots of dudes actually that go to this church, we could probably bring every gun that's available to you. So, which would be a lot of fun. So, so I'll talk with a couple guys, and we'll do something together. I think that'd be a really neat time together. Any other felt needs that have come into your head because of this conversation tonight? Things that you think like, I'd like to understand that more, or could we consider some more information in this regard? Anything like that you can think of that would help us help you?
How would you secure all the windows in your home?
Yeah, great question. I don't know if any guys here would agree with me, but if you have ever shot at smart sighting, everybody familiar with what smart sighting is? It's a product. I think it's an LP product, right, Pete? LP product called Smart Sighting. It's a wafer board with a really super dense, high pressure glue. I think the thinnest you can get is 3/8 all the way up to maybe go up to even 3/4 of an inch. But it destroys bullets when the bullet hits it. Bullet just kind of goes blah. It's not the cheapest product in the world, but it is easy to handle, and it's very, 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 very tough. Super hard material. That's what I chose for my house. You can often get it in damaged supply out on Diamond Lake. They'll have units of it because it comes in 4x10 foot sheets, and the 10-foot sheet ends get broken or snapped off. A forklift hits them, something like that. And so they'll sell them to you really, really fairly inexpensive. Well, you don't need 10 feet long. You just need enough to cover your window. So I'm going to secure my windows from the inside. And my supply is going to be right on next to my house to be able to get at it quickly and keep it dry, that kind of thing. But my windows will be secured from the inside, which isn't necessarily the best. But I want to be able to take my covering on and off my windows from the safety of being in my home, not have to go outside to take those on and off. Does that make sense? But it is a pretty good product for knocking down or redirecting ammunition. Screws and a screw gun. My Craftsman style molding will no longer look amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dane?
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so critical, guys. Everybody's home's so different. To have a little inspection and evaluation by somebody that's been there, done that. So if you're interested in that, let us know, and we'll work those kinds of things out. Because what seems like it might work for one person is not going to work for the other. So that's where somebody that's professional like Todd can help with that. And he can train a few of us, so he's not doing it all. He can train a few of us to do the same thing, and we can help others. So those are just things to be thinking about, and to really take seriously these steps to get to that point, and then talk to Todd about those things, and to Dane in particular, because they're more up on that. The other thing I think it's really critical, guys, is that when I first started talking about this kind of stuff years ago to my family, it really concerned them to think that we might have to face really difficult times. But if you think about the rest of the Christian world, they face this kind of stuff all the time. So we need to get ourselves in a position where if we end up in that place, we can actually not only protect our own families, but work to save other families and to pass the gospel on because we survived it. So the more you understand this, the more steps you take, the more you prepare your children and your families to understand it, the more at peace with it, and the more they'll get involved in this is part of our life. This is how we defend our families. This is how we defend our church. This is how we have to defend our church through the elders, through doctrine, and some of you as well, battling against false teachers and everything else. But this is saving human life. People are created in the image of God, and they are valuable, and they're not supposed to have their lives taken by somebody that's coming there to do evil. So prepare yourself to think this through and sit back and say, okay, and now we've got some people that really know that have done it, going to show us how. Take these steps on each week and get at least going that fast. You can get ahead of it if you want to. There's nothing there big and expensive that you're not going to, again, rotate and use.
So to close this out, if there's no other questions, there's only about 50 of us in the room right now. And I know our church is 350?
Right, somewhere in there.
Ain't good. We need your help. You've got friends that are in this church, brothers and sisters in Christ, who need to hear this and know this information. So I and Bill and Todd and Dave and Mike and Dave and Dave and Dave.
Dave. And the other Dave.
We're asking you to please go and start communicating with our body of believers on this kind of thing. I think you guys could, right? I mean, you feel like, I can go sit down and have this kind of conversation. Everybody in our church needs to know this, and that's really our emphasis here. Your family, your relatives, and then our body here, Covenant Life Fellowship. Now, it's not selfish. This is who God's told us to take care of, right? So that's what we need to do. But you also may have some dear brothers and sisters in Christ that live next to you that don't go here. I'd say have that conversation with them this week, and say let's make a plan together in case something that happens. How are you able to take care of yourself and your family, and just start having that kind of conversation with your neighbors? Okay.
Yeah. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for this body of believers. Each one is very precious. Each family is incredibly important. And you've given us, as leaders in the church, the responsibility to prepare ourselves and in each of our families to face what reality is Help us not to be the ostrich. Help us not to be the person that's the sluggard and just think somebody else will take care of it for us. Help us to be the one that's diligent like the ant, that doesn't have to have somebody else motivate them to take care of their families. Help us to look at what needs to be done, be realistic, take the steps necessary, and then reach out and touch someone else. What a great opportunity to show our concern and care for others and to set up systems and networks of people to be of assistance to one another in all difficult times, not just in total chaos, through a snow, through a fire, through a terrible bad weather, just through a pandemic. Help us to be prepared to serve one another in the name of Christ. And we just thank you for every person here and pray that you'll give us the wisdom to move forward. In Jesus' name, amen.